All right, guys. So the Pac-12 dissipated into the unknown, and now all of a sudden they're back, and now they're the six-pack. So just recently, just as of last week, it was announced that Colorado State, San Diego State, Fresno State, and Boise State would all be leaving the Mountain West as of 2026 to join the Pac-12, which is now the six-pack. So the Pac-12, whenever they kind of disappeared, they announced that they were essentially going to be trying to retain Oregon State and Washington State and try to build around them. So by doing this, a lot of people have speculated the Mountain West would be poached. Well, here we are. They did. They were losing 4 teams to now the Pac-12. And the Pac-12 is going to be looking for at least another 2 additional people to be able to compete for the bids in 2026. So keep an eye on who those other schools are going to be poached. Still could be Mountain West schools. Who knows? I'm sure they're talking to a lot of people right now about what this looks like. And plus, too, you got to keep in mind they can always retain different people, different schools in basketball compared to football. So it'll be intriguing to see at least kind of what happens to the Pac-12 over the course of the next 2 years. So really, talking about the Mountain West has been one of the more premier leagues in the country over the last last really decade, honestly. So this is a league that, in terms of basketball, it's been multiple bids. In terms of football, they're pretty solid in FBS. So, there's a lot of things to like about the Mountain West. So now they're being poached in favor of the Pac-12, which you could make an argument at this point in time, unless they start adding more power schools like California or Stanford. Then all of a sudden you're just kind of well, is the Pac-12 really any different than the Mountain West? I'd argue no, it's not at this point in time. Not with the 6 teams they've retained. They're pretty much a mid-major at this point in time. So now the Mountain West is just kind of left behind to try to pick up the pieces that these 4 schools are leaving behind. So really, let's talk about what are the replacement options for these schools. So they're now, or for this conference, so they're now down to 7 schools. So really, you could say okay, great, let's add 3. That's if nobody else leaves. I think UNLV will still leave personally. That's just my gut feeling. They're starting to have a little bit more success in football. Basketball programs obviously has a strong history behind them. And last season they were making a run really towards the last half of the season. So things are trending upward. I can 100% see them leaving as well. But let's just say they don't for the sake of this video. So we're going to say great, okay, you got 7 schools to try to replace and get 3 of them to at least get to an even number of 10. So what does this really look like for them in terms of what are their options? So being in the FBS, you're not really going to probably poach people from other FBS conferences. You're not there's really nobody from the Sun Belt or anything like that's going to come over to the Mountain West. So your options are pretty much going to be pulling people from the FCS. So when I start off with these first 2, absolutely nobody's going to be shocked by these. It's North Dakota State and South Dakota State. These are the no-brainer home runs. They've dominated the FCS level. They've won 11 out of the last 14 championships in the FCS. In another one of those, they lost in the runner-up as the runner-up. So they've been in the FCS championship 12 out of the last 14 seasons, winning 11 of those. Insane. North Dakota State's record since 2010 is 181-24. Ignorant. It's just ridiculous. I don't know who does that. They've been undefeated multiple years. It's insanity. And South Dakota State's 131-52 since 2010. So these 2 programs have just strictly dominated FCS football. Hasn't even been close. People are struggling to even keep up with them. In terms of operating income, North Dakota State reported $6.4 million in operating income. That was 154th in college football last season. South Dakota State brought in $6.2 million, 158th. So pretty equal in terms of revenue numbers. For comparison to that, though, in the Mountain West, last place was San Jose State. They brought in 10.6 in football. All these revenue numbers are strictly football. I'm not looking at any other statistics for other programs, including basketball, because let's be honest, these people don't care about basketball at this point in time. So we're going to focus primarily on football and then get into the basketball here in a minute. So realistically, yeah, they're lower in operating income, but they've been FCS. So you go to FBS, Mountain West has far better TV deals and everything involved there. So it's going to be a no-brainer that they're going to bring in more operating income when they go from FCS to FBS. And then in terms of basketball, both these schools have solid basketball programs as well. The Jackrabbits, I'm pretty sure, went 28-6 within one of the recent years. So all of a sudden, you're kind of bringing the Mountain West has been growing so much in basketball, and now you're losing some of those pieces. Adding people like them going into the Mountain West, are you going to be back at the same level immediately? No, not by any means. but you're not going to be far. You're still going to be a top 10 mid-major conference in the country. You're probably not going to be number 5, number 6. And that's okay, I think. Realistically, you're trying to right the ship at this point in time before things get too out of hand. So, speaking of those two, I think the third one that you could see start to be mentioned a lot, and I think other people have talked about him as well, is Montana State. Montana State's operating income is really interesting because it was $11.6 million. So that was 101st in all of college football. So that's better than FBS schools, like the lower end ones at least. So you already have success in football. The record was 110-55 over since 2010. So to the level of the Dakotas, no, but still very solid. So the operating revenue's already up there. So they have success in the metrics. They have success in the record. So, and geographically, they still fit. So, I think one thing I just want to get clear here too is geographically, it doesn't matter anymore. UCLA is playing IU. It doesn't matter. There's so much money because of football right now that geographically, just because the Dakotas or just because Montana State are not within driving distance of some of the Mountain West schools, it doesn't matter anymore. Nobody cares. Nobody cares geographically. I've been seeing people talk about that, and it's nobody cares geographically anymore. The small schools care, but these schools are not going to care to go to with the opportunity to go to FBS. The question is, though, do they want to leave the FCS? And I think this is where it gets interesting because, okay, the Dakotas, right? 11 out of the last 14 years, they've won the championship. The Missouri Valley is the premier league, which they both play in, just their football teams. Basketball does not play in Missouri Valley. So they have won 11 out of 14 years. Missouri Valley is the premier conference in FCS. So really, Big Sky's not far behind. So you're looking at this and you're like, okay, great. We can compete for a championship every single season. It does not matter. We will be in championship contention at the end of the year. When you go FBS, that's not going to be the case. You might be able to compete for the G5 spot, but that's still a big if. Still a big if. So realistically, you kind of have to ask yourself, is the money worth leaving the FCS where you can compete every single year to move up to the FBS? Ultimately, that's a them question. I'm an accountant by trade, but I'm not in the rooms. I don't know what these numbers look like, what the estimates look like. There's no doubt there's going to be more money in the FBS, but it just kind of comes down to what do they as a school want to decide. I think 10, 15 years ago, we're not even having this conversation. They're not going to leave. The Mountain West is going to have to pick up a little bit lower than the upper echelon of FCS schools, because 10, 15 years ago, money wasn't what it's doing right now. So we're just growing on trees in college football. So really, 10, 15 years ago, they're going to say, I'm staying in the FCS. I can win a championship every single year or be competing for it. So why would I want to leave? It's kind of if it's not broke, don't fix it. Well, at this point in time, though, money talks. So with the way that college football funding is going, why would you not at least consider it? So I think that's why those two are obviously going to be the home runs. Montana State's not going to be far behind in terms of level of success in terms of trying to get them over. I think at the end of the day, it's really just going to come down to, do they want to leave? What can the Mountain West do to sweeten the pot to make them leave? And then third of all, does this school just want to give up in the fact and saying okay, we can make $20 million more in operating revenue every single season by going FBS. Is that worth more than competing for an FCS championship every single year? The business person inside of me would say probably. But also at the end of the day, it comes down to the school, and there's going to have to be a lot of people to prove that. So, for the Mountain West, getting those 3 schools would be huge. Again, geographically, doesn't matter anymore. So being able to retain that, you are riding the ship and keeping it going forward. I'm going to add a 4th school, and I might get harassed for this one. I don't really know. I'm kind of going out on a limb. I'm not a college football guy. I really want to add that I'm not a college football guy. Live and breathe college basketball, but college football is second tier to me. I watch it. I know enough to get me by in trivia, and that's about it. So the 4th school I'm going to throw out here is Idaho. Bear with me because the record's not good since 2010. But the record since 2010 is 61-104. But the last 2.5 seasons, I'm counting this season, so it's not really half, 2.25 season, they are 18-10. This season, they beat an FBS school in Wyoming, and they almost beat Oregon. arguably they were in it the entire game into the fourth quarter. Oregon pulled away with a 24-14 victory. Like, Idaho could have won that game. Could have been 3-0 with 2 FBS wins and one being over Oregon. Would be pretty impressive, not going to lie. So, Idaho, despite they were really, really, really bad, 2011-2014, total of single-digit wins. Very bad. Not good. So that skews this record, like, horrendously. And even around then, they had another 9-win season, but, like, really below that, it's kind of been, like, around 500, maybe a game over, maybe not. Like, it just kind of ranging around that 500 level, and then the last two and a half seasons, really, they've kind of started turning things around. I think the reason why they're intriguing is they brought in $6.5 million in revenue and for just football, which placed them at 152nd. So they're pretty much right around the Dakotas in terms of operating revenue. Geographically, they fit. It's kind of same boat. Is it perfect? Nope. But who cares anymore? It's not the same days as it was when your dad was watching college football. So this one's probably not going to happen, but you never know if one of these schools turns, if let's say Montana State turns them down, or one of the Dakotas turns them down, which I almost feel like the Dakotas are just going to be like a group package, like either both of them are going or neither of them's going. I just get that vibes. So maybe, there's some work in there that can go. I doubt it happens, but I thought it was an intriguing one. I was kind of like looking at all the operating revenues and the FCS levels, and I was looking at the overall records, and obviously Idaho's, again, really struggled. But I think what caught my eye is just the fact that, like, they're kind of building something special in terms of college football, and that's what's going to make all these decisions. College basketball doesn't matter, but their college basketball program's still not bad either. So it kind of made it like an intriguing option as like a little bit of a curveball, something that can try to like think outside the box there. Maybe not. Maybe other people are saying it too. I was trying not to base my views off other people's views. I kind of wanted to create this just based off of, like, I've seen a little bit on Twitter, right? But like outside of that, like, I haven't read specific articles about this because I really just kind of wanted to get my personal opinion out there before I start like shaping it as like, oh yeah, I see these schools, or like whatever the case may be. So honestly, I'm curious your thoughts. Again, I don't live, breathe, die college football. I'm a college basketball guy, and I assume you all are too, but some of you are far bigger college football fans than I am. So I'm curious, who do you think is going to replace the Mountain West? Because the Mountain West is going to have to make some home runs here to try to retain and understand. Like, some of these other schools are not going to want to stay in the Mountain West if all of a sudden the Mountain West is the 12th best conference in college basketball. College football, they start taking a step back as well. It's going to hurt TV deals. It's going to hurt everything. So, like, there's just a lot of implications if you don't get this correct. So who do you think is going to join and replace these schools in terms of, is it going to be FCS? Like high-end FCS? Is it going to be middle FCS? Like, who do you see taking over some of these spots that, like, or are they going to try to get creative? Are they going to start thinking about, like, who's a high-rising program that's starting to put money into it, and who's, like, fundraising for a new stadium or fundraising for stadium upgrades? Like I'm just really curious, honestly, what you all think. So if you're watching this on YouTube, leave your comments down below, and then if you're get on my Substack, I'm posting an article about this as well. Leave some comments on there as well. I'm kind of like crowdsourcing this. I'm going to be kind of watching it from the lens of college basketball, but I understand that like college basketball isn't going to make this decision. It's going to be college football. Everything's been college football. I mean, look at UMass. They're going to the MAC after playing in the A10 simply because of football. So like, just saying college football is pretty much ruling everything, not college basketball, but I'm going to look at this from the college basketball lens, but it's a little bit hard too when you're talking about these things. So just curious, yeah. Let me know who you think is going to be there, and appreciate you all watching this one.